Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Everyone's okay with that? Um, Thank you all for being here. My name is Thomas Cospito. I work as the harm reduction coordinator for the Western North Carolina AIDS Project. Um, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you all on behalf of myself, on behalf of WinCap, Jennifer, Seek Healing. It really means a lot for everyone that tuned in today. I know times are difficult right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of difficult things going on in the world. But we felt that it was very important to make sure that this event continued, and there's been a lot of work put in from everyone involved, and I just wanted to say thank you all, everyone who tuned in, because we really do appreciate you joining us today. It means a lot, not only to the organizers, but to everyone who has lost someone from overdose. I'm going to turn over the MC duties to Joey from Seek Healing. He'll be in charge of introducing all the speakers. I just wanted to greet everyone and say thank you for being here. Joey?
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, my name is Joey, and it was a combination of me and Tom and Jennifer Nicolais and then our organizations together that have put all this together. And we had one in person last year, and we chose to do it online for safety. But like Tom said, we still really wanted to be able to make this offering, this community reminder of the impact of substance use in our area. Up first, we have an opening prayer from a Haywood Street congregation pastor by the name of Brooke Vanderlind. Is Brooke here? The name. Yeah, there's Brooke. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Brooke here, and she's going to lead us in an opening prayer to get us started and ground us into the event. Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah, thank you all. I just wanted to say that I am grateful to be here on behalf of Haywood Street Congregation. I am also a widow due to overdose, so it's personally very important that I'm here, and I'm grateful to be here. So let us pray together. God of comfort, thank you for this time together. We are the survivors of those lost to the disease of addiction. We hurt in ways many will never understand, because with such a complicated disease comes an incredibly complicated grief. And while many of us may still be shaking our fists to the sky or stomping our feet to the ground, even cursing your name at times, we give thanks that you know that often we are just tired and sad, that we are angry, that we miss our husbands and our moms and our kids. We give thanks that you love us through our pain. We also give thanks that you loved our brothers and our sisters through theirs, that your love never waited for the needle to be drawn or the bottle to be put down. Your love was and is always on the house, always ever present, always ever flowing. You were with our loved ones from the first breath to the last, and every healthy, happy, strung out, hopeful, helpless step in between. God, be with us today, be with us now. Sit with us in remembrance and in celebration of lives that were lived and shared. Bring us hope, comfort, and belief in better days. It is in your most loving, most comforting, most merciful name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I really appreciate those centering words and just reminders that this impacts so many people, so many different people of all walks of life. It doesn't target anyone in particular. I myself had a partner of eight and a half years that I lost to an overdose shortly after we had split up because our relationship was so toxic. And so thank you for sharing. room here, we have Amy Upham. She's part of the Sunrise Community and Buncombe County Health and Human Services. I believe I got that correct. I'll go ahead and unmute her next. Let's see here. Amy.
I believe Amy, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, and Amy was planning on joining in a few minutes. I know she's running just a few minutes behind.
Okay. Tom, do you have anything that you wanted to add for right now, or Jennifer? That, like I kind of mentioned, we're kind of the co-hosts, and we do have some time blocked off for each of you to speak about our organizations. Just wondering if there's anything you wanted to add for right now.
I wonder if it might be interesting or helpful to presence. We're here today to raise awareness in addition to holding space for each other's grief. And I think I just want to acknowledge that I'm still feeling really emotionally moved by your prayer, Brooke. Thank you. I'm just wondering if we want to presence how much more challenging this year has been for those of us in our community who struggle with addiction and with IV drug use in particular. The pandemic, I think, has made it harder for all of us to access the support systems that we may have created for ourselves and wherever we are in the journey to health and happiness. And I just know from where I sit in the community that we work with at Seek Healing that we've really seen how much more challenging access to that support, both internally and externally, has been in these past 9 or 10 months. We've seen overdose and suicide visits to the ER admission increase pretty dramatically. And I think in this moment, I'm just trying to bring our attention to how important this is. It's always important, and this issue has been important for years. And I'm just really, really grateful to everybody who's showing up online for this call in the context of the year that we find ourselves living in. And just wanting to bring that to all of our attention. Does anyone else have anything to say about that? How they've seen the atmosphere and the context of our world this year affect either overdose rates or the people in the communities we know who are most affected by this issue?
So I just changed the settings. So if you do have something that you want to add, even on a personal level at this moment, you can unmute yourself, and if you would like to share with everyone here.
Well, I imagine that most of us here are already well aware of how serious of an issue this is and how much worse it's gotten this year. So I guess I'll also take this moment to presence what great work we've been doing as a community in that fight this year, and all the organizations who are represented here. We'll be hearing from everybody here as we get into the agenda, from Health and Human Services next, from Buncombe County, that Joey just introduced a bit prematurely, as well as WinCap. Together they provide really crucial, our county's most central harm reduction services around getting people access to sterile syringes and safe injecting equipment. Haywood Street Congregation, where Brooke joins us from, is actively, constantly holding space for people who are at risk for overdose, and providing safe spaces for people to gather and connect. Seek Healing, the organization I'm with, does much similar work, and we also have representatives here from Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness that provide really critical peer support services and easy, immediate access to a recovery path if that's something that someone wants to begin. So I've just seen this community show up in an incredible way this year since the pandemic began. Yeah, I think I just want to give everybody here some kudos for all the hard work that we've been doing and the ways that we've been supporting each other and our community.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing. You know, I myself, with my own path to recovery after using opiates in a ever upward swing, was for over 4 years. And it's just the sheer amount of overwhelmingness that journey using opiates, and then making the active decision to not anymore in that recreational manner was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I know that if someone is ready to make that choice, that we as a community need to provide the resources for them to make that choice and to make the choices that they choose to make in a safe capacity. I think it's super critical that we as a community understand that that's the best that we can do without being overbearing, without holding that space, kind of like you're saying, offering the resources, supporting if people choose to engage in that support. And it makes a big difference. Like that was a big part of my own recovery, was finding a space where I was able to do that, where I was embraced in that manner.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Joey. I really honor the unplanned vulnerability. And I see that Amy just joined us.
Oh, hey everybody.
Hi, Amy.
We had Joey had just started your introduction maybe a moment before you arrived, Amy. So we'd love to hear whatever you'd like to share on behalf of the health department and
Sure. Well, thanks everybody for being here and honoring the lives that have been lost. We had hoped that 2019 would continue to see the downward trend that we saw in 2018. So for those of you who are not aware, in 2017, we had our largest spike in overdose deaths here in Buncombe County. We had 124 people overall, 113 residents of Buncombe County died. And then in 2018, that went down to about 87, 88, I think. Unfortunately, last year it went back up. As far as Buncombe County residents, it went back up to 98. So that's was really unfortunate. It had to do, I think, mostly with the end of last year. There was a bad batch of meth that went around that was laced with fentanyl, and so there was a lot of deaths that happened in sort of October, November, early December of last year. So I'm sure some of the names y'all will be reading from that time. But all that said, even though we lost some traction in the fight against overdose, I do want to say that this year we have gained a lot of that traction back, which is stunning considering COVID. Our ED visits for overdose are lower than the whole state. Across the country and across North Carolina, cities are seeing about a 40% increase in overdose deaths because of COVID. So that's something that really, I want to highlight that it's a crisis that we're in. But Buncome's actually seen a slight decrease in ED visits for the year. So, which represents a pretty large gap, represents about a 45% gap between what we're experiencing, what other areas are experiencing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the efforts of all the local nonprofits to harm reduction and treatment and recovery and prevention, and that working together. I've really seen this community, for the most part, with one or two exceptions, but for the most part, come together to, reduce the suffering caused by substance use disorder, whatever that looks like for folks, right? So we at the county embrace harm reduction, and that means that we want to reduce the harms associated with drug use. So that means we acknowledge that there's harms happening. We don't promote illicit drug use, but we also don't force people to change. And we understand that people use substances and use work and use sex and use all sorts of things to cope with life. So we want to be there for wherever somebody is on their journey. So to that end, we do have a syringe service program. We last year, so we opened in August of last year, and so we've been open a little bit more than a year. And in that year, we've seen over 300 unique clients. We refer about a quarter to treatment. They ask, we want to make sure that they're asking and we're not pushing it on them. We refer almost a half to peer support services. So, even if somebody's not wanting to get into MAT, which is the gold standard for opioid treatment, is Suboxone or methadone. And so if somebody's not wanting to go there, they can still receive peer support counseling and linkage to other types of care. Maybe they need their diabetes cared for, or they need housing or something like that. So our peer supports, and I see Courtney's on here in Tunisia, they've been just invaluable in terms of linking people to that care. And then the other big plus of somebody using, the health department for syringe services, and we love the work that Win Cap and Steady does, but folks can then immediately be seen for an immunization. So it's pre-COVID anyway, same day walk-in. And we had an incentive going for a while where we were able last year to get 40 people immunized against Hep A and Hep B. We provided just a $10 Ingalls gift card, right? Like whatever you need, get, gas, food, go get it, please get your immunization. You can do it at the same time that you're here getting your supplies. And then we also, Tunisia helps people schedule their STD appointments. So if they do want comprehensive, full testing, confirmatory testing, they can get it at the health department, and she'll help schedule that with the admin assistant for them. So again, that's probably about a quarter of folks that we've scheduled for STD appointments. So that feels really good. It's just been really great movement overall on the harm reduction space, I think, for our county health department. We're the only one in the Western region right now that has a syringe service program. There's a couple out in more central North Carolina. And it was hard to start up in the mountains. There's a lot of stigma out here, and there's a lot of competition out here, and we're not near Raleigh, so we don't have, sort of big city guidance, kind of a little bit like the Wild Wild West in a lot of ways, not just with harm reduction, but with treatment, with recovery. There's not as much oversight over here for things like halfway houses and that. So, we're trying to fill those gaps at the health department, but we also recognize we can't do everything and be everybody and oversee everything. So we don't try. But we have a few other programs. So that's the syringe service program, which did really well this past year. Tunisia definitely led that effort. And when COVID hit, they went mobile. And there was some contention in the community about us going mobile because we were going to some of the same places where other exchanges operated. And to that, I just want to say that, we saw it as like food trucks. We saw it as, any type of condom distribution, like, people needed supplies. We wanted to be there. So we went intentionally to places where food distribution was happening. So we knew we would hit the most people. And we went on days that no other exchange would be there. So we didn't compete, or, there wasn't hopefully any bad blood. But in doing that, I think we're able to serve a lot of folks. We tripled our numbers by doing that. And then when phase 2 came in, we were able to go back into the health department. And but what's really cool is Tunisia and Courtney are still going out twice a week to AHOPE and to Kairos West to distribute hygiene supplies, naloxone, and fentanyl test strips. So we've kind of kept our syringe exchange operation in-house, but all the other services that we provide, we are still mobile, and we actually changed our safety and security plan so that we could go mobile and continue to be mobile. So there's people with, high risk chronic conditions that we're able to, that Tunisia's able, I should say, to visit in their home, outside with a mask on and drop off their supplies. So that feels really good. So along with that, Courtney Mosley, who's on the call, she started reentry services. And Courtney, are you able to say hello for just a second to folks? She's listening, but I know she was not, I did not ask her to present, but I just saw your name on here, so I wanted to give you props. But Courtney's been amazing. And, within the first few months of this reentry program, which is linkage to care for people who have left the criminal justice system, well, left jail specifically, or prison. She's served since April 5th, over 50 people, and gotten about a quarter of them, again, into housing, halfway houses mostly. She has linked about a fifth of 20% of folks with medication-assisted treatment. So, you know, harm reduction, I think, has been a huge help in keeping our overdose numbers down during COVID. But the other thing that really has happened and has been amazing is that there's a huge motivation with MAHEC and with Appalachian Mountain Community Health Centers to provide MAT to the uninsured. And Dogwood, we were able to partner with Dogwood, where we pay for the medication, they pay for the doctor time for 75 people this fiscal year to receive that medication-assisted treatment. So when Courtney, you know, links somebody with that medication-assisted treatment, it's free for them for an entire year, every aspect of it, including their primary care services. So, so I do think that, and that started in like April, May, and I do think that has also kept our numbers down. You know, for those who don't know, medication-assisted treatment has a 50% success rate, where detox alone is 10%. So big shout out to AMCHC and MAHEC for making that happen with us. And now I think there was 10 or 12 people linked within the first few months, and now I think that's doubled by now. So by the end of the year, we expect to have most of those slots filled. And I just got word that we could add more slots next year. So that's really good news. Yeah, just so many amazing things happen. And I don't want to talk too long, and I don't want to talk about things that aren't happening yet, but I just will say really briefly that we did get a grant for post-overdose response. Family Preservation has that contract. They are hiring. So that's going to launch within the next month or so, along with community paramedicine. So EMS was able to get some funds to actually go to people at the site of overdose, and provide that linkage to care to AMCHC or MAHEC or winches. And also, eventually the idea is to provide Suboxone. They call it Bupe on the bus, but it's Suboxone off the ambulance. And that's also launching within the next month. We're both in the hiring process. So there's a lot of really, 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 like, I can't tell you how much cool stuff has been happening to save people's lives. And then, you know, lastly, I do want to say that our Register of Deeds and myself and the Sheriff's Office partnered to create a website where folks can view what's, you know, been happening with the opioid epidemic over the past 10 years or so. And it's really simple. The website is buncombecounty.org/opioids. And there you can see some of the stats for gender and race and age, as well as occupation, and also naloxone. Thank you so much. You can see that from 2000 to 2019. And the way that we did that, Register of Deeds definitely did all the maps, the ArcGIS, awesome. Like, they should definitely win some state and national awards for their work on this. It's a very innovative way of telling the story, right? So it's not just data charts, which I can geek out on, but, you know, people want to know who are the human beings that we're losing. And so it tells the story from, you know, when pain was recognized as the fifth vital sign, and opioids were pushed as prescription drugs, all the way through fentanyl and polysubstance use that we're seeing now. That's my dog, Roxy. So I definitely encourage folks to check that out. But how we had to do it was both Drew Reisinger and I, and we both just went through all of the death records that were seen by a medical examiner for the past 10 years, and entered it into this tremendous large spreadsheet, and probably, I mean, was many hours of work. And then they were able to take those numbers, Drew and his deputy, Miranda, who's phenomenal, were able to take those numbers and put it into visuals. So please check it out. Please, if you know someone if you've lost someone, there is a section down at the bottom of sort of a national map of where you can actually tell your story, or tell the person's story. So that's something that you can enter in there. So right now, you know, I want to say, going forward, looking into the future, like I said, we have a lot of things underway, both at the county and other organizations, right? So Those slots at Mayheck and AMCHC are not just because of us, they're also because of Dogwood and because of the work that those agencies have done. So there's a lot of good things up ahead as far as opportunities go, but COVID also is still with us. And what that means is that there are real behavioral health effects still happening and actually getting worse because evictions are no longer stayed. And that's the biggest one, right? And job losses, unemployment is no longer covered in the same way. So we have to think really innovatively going forward about how do we address the long-term depression and anxiety that COVID is causing. I've heard a lot of stories of people who used to were in recovery for a year or two and have gone back because they lost their job or they lost their home or they can't stand being cooped up. So I welcome any input on that, through email, phone. You can call me. I'll put my phone number in the chat here. If you have any ideas of how we can, as a community, outside of course, getting treatment to folks and having harm reduction services, I think as far as that goes, in Buncombe County, we are above the par with the rest of the state. We have infused a lot of things over the past year or two. And so that's looking pretty good, right? We've got community paramedicine coming. We've got some male MAT in the jails. I mean, we've got things that a lot of other counties don't have service-wise. But how do we keep people's spirits up? Because it's not just about giving people a medication or giving people a needle, right? It's like, how do we do that? We are working at the CARE team, which is our substance use task force, of doing a recovery campaign, a poster campaign, having peer supports kind of, tell their story very briefly in this poster campaign. And that's going to be great, but it still doesn't feel like enough. So I'm open to ideas, would love to hear from folks about how we can, and would love, if you're not already part of the CARE team, that's part of the work that we're going to be doing soon. I also just want to say really quickly, because I did see that we were criticized, the CARE team specifically was criticized for inviting police to the table and on social media. And so I want to sort of explain what that is for, because personally, and I'll just speak from my personal experience, it's not a Buncombe County endorsement. I do believe we should defund the police by about 50%. I think there's a lot of programs, social programs that could be set up with that money. At the same time, as a survivor of domestic violence, I don't think we should defund the police entirely. And I also think that the police need to hear from us what is needed. So I've gone to enough police meetings and sheriff's departments meetings and tried to sell things like pre-arrest diversion, tried to, work with prison reentry, right? There's been early releases across the state because of COVID, and I've tried to advocate, and I've pushed for better, protocol on that. And I think it's time for, because there is a call for police reform, for them to come to us and to learn from us. So, if we're going to do pre-arrest diversion, if we're going to decriminalize drug use, which is something I'm very in favor of, and I think can say on the record, then we need cops at the table. It's just pure and simple. We can't do it without them because they're the ones arresting people. So, I wanted to clarify that for folks on this Overdose Awareness Day. We need everybody at the table. And that is always the case when there's an epidemic or a pandemic. You can't leave a huge section of the community out. It won't work. Demonizing people doesn't work. And so I am in favor of that's, we demonize people who use drugs, and look what happens. So I'm in favor of everyone being at the table. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to talk with y'all and to be here. And I appreciate the work that Seek Healing does, and I appreciate the work that WNCAP does in the community. And thanks for letting me talk. And if you have any questions, I have a few more minutes left. I'm happy to answer anything.
Wow, Amy, thank you so much for that, dropping that knowledge bomb on us and really giving us some real-time analytics and some real-time feedback about, how does substance use in our community, like how are we approaching it, and what services are available, what how we can move forward. And it's an election year. The politicking is very fierce, as I think we're all
Yep.
aware of.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's an important reminder that the law enforcement and the incarceration systems are the number one line item budget for Asheville, North Carolina, and for counties and cities across the country.
Mhm.
And as you know, as we've watched crime statistics rise, and police ask for more money, and crime statistics rise, and police ask for more money, and eventually it just kind of feels like we're doing the same thing and expecting different results, which I think we know there's a definition for that.
Yeah.
So when we talk,
Yes.
when we talk about like defunding the police, we're talking about shifting our resource management to better serve our communities, the individuals, the people that need help and are turning towards these happenings, these choices that they make because they feel stuck, because they feel like it's not it's not going to work. So thank you so much for touching on that.
Sure thing.
Does anybody else have any questions for Amy Upham while she's here and still has a few minutes on her speaking slot? Alrighty.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Amy. We're still a little ahead of our kind of intended schedule here, which is good. You know, it's better to be a little under than a little over. And up next we have Raymond Velasquez. I've got a rumbling here going by. Up next we have Raymond Velasquez, who is here. I saw them earlier, and they're going to be sharing their survival testimonial, their unique story about their experience with an overdose. Is that correct, Raymond?
Hi there. Yeah, partly just personal story of myself and my witnessing of drug use and overdose and situations like that. But if you want, I can go ahead and start.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Raymond.
Okay, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raymond Velasquez, and I work for WinCap here in Asheville. I'm thankful for forums and events like this and opportunities to tell my story. I was born in 1987, premature, and with traces of crack cocaine in my system. My mother had been using while I was pregnant, and after a hospital, I was finally allowed to go back home. So from the beginning of my life, I knew of drugs and the effects on family and loved ones. My father shortly left my mother after I was born and was routinely introduced to my mother's boyfriends, creating environments of sexual, physical, and mental abuse. In 1993, I was watching Wizard of Oz for the first time, and I'll never forget this. And the current boyfriend of my mother came running out the bathroom, searched for the house phone to call the ambulance, 911. Shortly after the ambulance had came, and I rushed to see my mother laying on the bathroom floor. And I was frightened and scared at the time. I was about 7 or 8, about 5 or 6. And at that time, I wasn't sure what was going on. A few years later, I did figure out a few things, not just why I wanted Dorothy's Ruby Red shoes, but also at that time, my mother had overdosed. And it wasn't the first time that I was told later on in my life. She has survived, and eventually I was separated from my mother, and I was back and forth between my father and my stepmom, being raised by my grandparents, sometimes in foster care. I've occasionally visited my mother in rehab once a month, like every third Sunday or something like that, just for a couple hours. But any time with her was amazing. And I remember, and that cycle of going back and forth between different housing didn't really end until I was about 13, when I was permanently back with my father and my stepmother. At the time, I started smoking weed, eventually led to cocaine use, um, and I went almost 6 years without seeing my mother. When I was 17, I started using meth mixed with cocaine as well, and which led to myself in and out of jail and in trouble quite often. Um, and At the time, the second time in jail, my mother reached out, and at the time I was living in Texas, and my mother was in Florida and reached out to me and said, "Hey, come live with me, and try to get you in the right path and a fresh start." So I made the move, and became sober in 2006. My mother at the time, in those years of not seeing her, had remarried and was doing very well. Um, 6 months after moving back to Florida, she was diagnosed with lymphoma cancer. In 2001, she had breast cancer and survived that. And I knew how resilient and strong my mother was, and that she would beat this again. My mother, during that period of time, relapsed and disappeared for a couple weeks. And I brought back a lot of childhood feelings of fear. And I feel like no matter what age, those memories come back, and you, it's like reliving them again. Eventually, she came home and returned home and continued her chemo. After a year of moving back to Florida, now 2 weeks after my 20th birthday, she had passed away at home alone. I struggled with sobriety for the next few years. And so I entered a relationship for 5 years and became sober and was very happy. And sometimes things come to an end. And after we broke up, I once again returned to partying and clubbing, drinking alcohol and doing cocaine 5 nights a week. I don't know how I did it, but I need 8 hours of sleep now. So it was just crazy thinking about that time and that person that I used to be. And my roommate at the time was in the business of escorting and introduced me to a couple of his clients. And I ended up having some of my own. And if cocaine or drug use and escorting sometimes can go hand in hand. And kind of, after a while, it was just the escorting was just paying for my addictions and my partying and things of like that. And during that time, I witnessed and lost a few people to drug use and overdose. And it was hard. And it wasn't until Thanksgiving 2017 in a DoubleTree in downtown Orlando after a 3-day meth binge that I realized this wasn't for me anymore and I needed to become sober. Um, and I was finished. In 2020, this year, I moved here to Asheville in February from Orlando for a change of scenery and a fresh start. In March, I donated blood because I knew there was the need for blood, especially due to COVID. A lot of people kind of stopped donating for a little while, and in doing so, I found out I was HIV positive, and I wanted to get confirmation testing, and I found a resource known as WinCap, and I went there to get confirmed testing. After I went to WinCap, I found amazing support, referrals, and some peace. A couple months later, I found a job opportunity available to start at WinCap, and I started in July. Um, and I feel like it was a full circle moment for me. I just, from everything that I received, from all the resources I received, I wanted to be part of something like that. And I wanted to help people like me find some peace and assistance, even if it was just one person. I'm thankful for places like WinCap and Seek Healing and other places that I'm finding out about now to provide the safe places. Uh, Thank you all so much for listening to my story. I found out speaking my truth and my story has become a form of a therapy for myself. And though heaven really couldn't wait for you, Mom, I know you're at peace and not hurting anymore. And I can't wait to see you again and just want to make you proud. Thank you all very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Raymond. It's, that sort of authenticity is needed, and I feel the same when I'm able to share my own story and to hear you be vulnerable and to hear you be real, and share is just. I'm so glad that you feel it is therapeutic for your sense of well-being and for your release of some of that
Can I
trauma.
invite, I know that this is such a strange context on Zoom, and I'm just like really aware of Raymond not being able to hear from all of us or see our faces. And I just want to invite you, if you feel moved, to take your mic off. And I just want to offer a little bit of applause or thanks to you, Raymond.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. The round of applause, the community support is I think we all, when we can be real with ourselves, when we can be real with our past, then we can live authentically in the present and create the future. And empathy and compassion. Those are the traits that provide support for people that struggle. And thank you again, Raymond. Thank you. Well, we're doing pretty good for our time thing, and our next speaker is Jennifer Nicolaisen. She is the executive director of Seek Healing. I am grateful for the opportunity that I've had to work with her and the rest of our team to do the work, to be there for people and to provide what we can for people. And I'll let Jennifer kind of dive into what our program actually offers, which she'll be talking about. Are you ready, Jen?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you, Joey. I'm still just really present with your story, Raymond, and I just want to point you to the chat box if you haven't looked at it already. I'm seeing that even though you can't see everybody's faces, I see a lot of people reaching out with gratitude and love, and I'm really feeling that as well. As it becomes my turn to speak here in the wake of what you were just speaking about, I'm just so aware of how hard it is to be a human being, how much suffering there is in this life, in this world, and how hard it is, how much more acutely hard it can be for some of us than others. And grateful for the chance to bring all of that into our collective awareness today. Feels really important. Well, as Joey said, my name is Jennifer Nicolaisen, and I'm the executive director of Seek Healing. We're a local nonprofit here in Buncombe County that exists to do our part in preventing drug overdoses and deaths of despair by providing experiences of real human connection, social connection. Through our programming, we implement what are called social health initiatives to augment existing mental health care and harm reduction infrastructure as it exists traditionally. We help people experience human connection and community without shame, especially in the times when they need it the most. And in order to do that, it means that our programs are necessarily not abstinence-based. Anyone is welcome to participate, whether you use drugs, whether you don't use drugs, whether you use some drugs and not others, or whether you've never used drugs before at all. Anyone who needs connection, anyone who needs community can come and experience it through the different programs we offer and practice communicating and being heard in a non-superficial way at our meetings, our events, and our trainings. The meetings really serve as a great alternative to 12-step meetings for folks who don't resonate with that particular path to recovery. And it's really because what we offer isn't a path to recovery as much as it is a path to connection. We believe that the value of connection speaks for itself, regardless of the choices that you're making around your substance use or the way that you're choosing to live your life. So we offer those spaces and trainings for experiencing real connection without shame and practicing communication skills. And we also give people who use drugs free access to all different kinds of holistic healing services like nutritional counseling, acupuncture, body work, trauma healing, different types of spiritual healing modalities. Much of our program subsidizes access to those types of services. And I have more to say, but before I go there, I do just want to share a little bit about our program and how our services have been implemented and adapted through this pandemic and through the past 9 months. We've served over 250 unique individuals since the shutdown really started and the stay home, stay safe orders went into place in March. Are programming these meetings that I'm talking about that serve as safe spaces to experience connection, to talk about anything, nothing is off limits, and you don't have to show up any particular way. Those moved completely online during the height of the pandemic, and then as the world has started to open back up over the summer, we have been meeting outside in parks and just recently returned to our office space at the United Way building on South French Broad Avenue to meet at a distance safely with face coverings. But it was really critical. We felt it a critical priority to maintain these spaces for meeting and for feeling heard throughout even the most intense parts of the stay-at-home orders, because of really what Amy was speaking to, the importance of keeping people's hopes up during this time. So you can really think of Seek Healing as that piece of the puzzle, and what we're seeking to do with our mission is, in addition to the actual physical resources of MAT and sterile syringes, how do we support the human spirit and create a sense of community and belonging that is a really crucial human need and a crucial part of emotional health and wellness. So our meetings have continued, which has been really important. We hear from our partners at local detox centers like RHA and ADACT that the resource of being able to immediately come to one of our meetings, especially for people who haven't had or prefer not to engage in more traditional recovery systems, have been really crucial. And we found that people who are able to engage in a Seek Healing context, especially within the first few weeks after making a choice to either detox completely or stop using a drug like heroin or meth while still using other drugs like alcohol or cannabis, is incredibly effective, with an 87% effectiveness rate for maintaining those intentions, whatever they are. We've also been experimenting with all kinds of other creative ways to continue holding people's spirits and providing that sense of community as our world has been shifting and as community becomes even harder to access than it was before. And I think we all agree that it already is a challenge in the world that we live in. We have recently implemented a needs program where anyone in the community can presence a need that either they have or someone they love has with consent from that person. Needs can be anything like, this person was recently released from prison, or they're in the hospital right now, or this person just went through a really bad breakup and I'm really worried and scared for them and their wellness. Or I'm really isolating and I know that this person who I love is really isolating and I got their consent to participate in this program. What we do is match everyone else who's involved in the Seek Healing program on a day when we feel resourced enough to give to other people. We match up those needs with folks who might be willing to either send a supportive text message, drop off a meal, drop off some flowers, basically creating a system that we can all hold on to for random acts of kindness and community support, even when we're isolated from each other under pandemic and quarantine conditions. So that's been a really beautiful part of the program that's evolved under these times that we find ourselves in that I want to speak to. We've also worked with our partners at WinCap and AHOPE and Haywood Street to provide free herbal first aid supports to people who are either withdrawing from substances or just experiencing a lot of anxiety and stress in the in the what can be a much more acute experience of that stress when you don't have a roof over your head, and the experience of existing in the pandemic is just orders of magnitude more difficult. So providing those herbal supports has also been a really important part of our programming these past 6 months. And then finally, we are getting ready to restart our extra care program, which provides free one-on-one services to people who use drugs or who have recently made a decision to change their substance use patterns in some way. We had to put the program on hold, both for funding reasons and because most of our providers weren't delivering services during the stay-at-home, stay-safe orders. Our acupuncturists, therapists, body workers, counselors, but we're just restarting that program here as of September 1st to make sure that people have accesses to the resources they need no matter what stage of the healing process they find themselves in. So that's a little bit about what we do and what we've been doing. And what I really want to say is that we have found that this approach, and really what the research is increasingly showing, is that this approach to providing a felt experience of community and belonging in conjunction with practical support services as far as medication and harm reduction services goes, people can experience that sense of community and belonging even just for the duration of a short meeting, can be deeply healing, and is a really important part of overdose prevention and keeping our communities safe. But it's tricky because for someone to feel like they really belong and like they're really feeling seen and heard in a connection with another person, they can't feel shame. Shame blocks connection. And unfortunately, when a person is using drugs in our world, they're almost automatically feeling shame on some level because we have such strong and insistent cultural values around sobriety and abstinence in our world. Our cultural norms tell us, for the most part, if you can't do it sober, then you're cheating. If you're doing drugs, you're wasting your time, you're not a valuable member of society. It kind of immediately creates shame for anyone who uses drugs in any capacity, whether they're using them functionally or dysfunctionally. So in feeling the stigma of that shame, people who use drugs end up being really psychologically isolated from being able to experience the healing power of connection, even more than other people in the world. And although I'd argue that that sense of shame is fundamentally what blocks all of us from being able to connect. But it's even that isolation is just even more acute when you're experiencing it psychologically from the continued forces of abstinence culture. I think some of the hardest work that we have to do in the fight against overdose deaths is to fight this psychological isolation by truly de-shaming ourselves and noticing when we shame others in our conversations, noticing the ways in which we make other people feel less than for altering their consciousness or soothing their pain in a particular way. Because if we can stop doing that, we can start having interactions that feel genuinely not superficial and not hierarchical. Conversations where people actually meet each other rather than trying to compete with each other about who's living a better life or who's being a better human. That kind of connection is what's really healing and empowering. And I imagine that, like me, many or even most of us on this call have lost a loved one to an overdose. I've personally lost 6 people in my life over the years. And I don't know if this is true for y'all too, but in addition to the grief, for me, in my experience, there's also guilt. There's this feeling like I should have or could have saved them if I had just tried better, if I had been a better friend, if I had just said the right thing. I want to presence that and normalize it. And I also want to express that I believe the truth is that there's really no way to save another person's life. There's no way that any of us can save or rescue each other in that way. And the reality of preventing overdoses, it's not about helping the people that we love quit or get sober. It's really just about connecting with each other in a way that doesn't look down on people who use drugs, so that we all feel free enough to make our own empowered choices and decisions. So that if we choose to, we can save ourselves. And that, I believe, is the unspoken message that comes when you give someone a free overdose reversal kit or a box of sterile syringes. It's that message that says you deserve to be safe. It's the space and love to make your own decisions about drug use, even if it causes you harm. It's the idea that everyone gets to make your own decisions, that you get to make your own decisions, I get to make mine, and that I'm not going to look down on you or judge you for the choices that you do make. I think that, between the drug war and abstinence culture in general, it's really hard to actually integrate this into our social services systems, and even harder maybe into our daily life and the way that we talk to each other. But I really want to ask or invite at least all of us here today to really look and be with that guilt that you might feel around the love that you've lost, and notice if it's still blocking you from seeing other people as humans who get to make their own choices, even if those are choices that hurt them sometimes. I invite all of us to notice if it's blocking you from letting you see yourself that way too. Like there's always some standard that you have to live up to being the kind of human that's hardworking, fits all these hardworking, sober cultural norms that we kind of demand from each other. I really think that if we can free each other from the need to be a certain way or to save and help each other, because there's really ultimately nothing to be saved from, then we might just start to be able to enjoy living together in community more. So thank you. I'm really, really grateful to everyone here for standing in solidarity around this uncomfortable truth with me, with us. And I really honor everyone here for the loss or the losses that you've each experienced. I believe that the memories of those that we've lost are so bright that they can lead the way for a new way of life and living in community in this world, a way where we can communicate openly about how we choose to alter our consciousness or soothe our pain, a way where we can all have access to the things we need to be safe in whatever choices we make about our substance use, and where we feel empowered enough to actually experience connection and community without shame or anxiety. So thanks for being my community and supporting me in that too.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's always, we work together, but it really is always a pleasure to hear you share your story, to hear you share Seek Healing story and our methods and just how interconnected this humaning thing we do is, and how important that understanding of connection is for our social health, and our social health is part of our mental health, and so thank you so much for sharing. Like I said, it's always just really enlightening and endearing to hear you authentically express yourself. As we come towards we have one more speaker, two more speakers before we begin the reading of the list of the names. And our next speaker is from the other hosting organization, WinCap. That was Thomas Caspito. He's the harm reduction coordinator. Tom, are you ready?
I am, thank you. Hi, my name is Tom Caspito, and I serve as the harm reduction coordinator for the Western North Carolina AIDS Project. I first want to say, Raymond, thank you so much for sharing your story, for telling us all of that, and for really being open with us. It means a lot today, especially. Jennifer, thank you so much. Everything that you said about connection is so very true. Amy, thank everyone so far that has spoken. Anyone who's going to speak, I really appreciate the openness and love that you're sharing today. Today is actually my second Overdose Awareness Day, and I cannot express how appreciative I am of everyone that's here. I've spent about 3 years in Western North Carolina now, and I'm continually impressed by the strong sense of love and community that can be seen here in so many different ways. In preparation for today, over 200 names were submitted for remembrance by friends and family. And I just want everyone to know that I and all of us who helped organize this event really understand the weight of the trust you have placed in us today. As a member of the WinCap harm reduction team, I understand that those honored today may not have always been treated with respect and dignity in life. I'm pained to think that maybe some of the 200 plus individuals we're honoring here today may not be on this list if the world were a better, more understanding place. WinCap is committed to improving the world and the lives of the people we serve because so many others do not yet have the knowledge needed to approach such difficult and painful topics. In the past year, our harm reduction team has had the opportunity to serve almost 4,000 people from all walks of life. We've heard stories of sadness and sorrow, but we have also heard love and laughter. Our team has worked to help people get into care when they wanted it, safer supplies when requested, and to just listen when a lot of people had no one else that would. In working on what I wanted to say today, I thought a lot about WinCap and all the work that we do in Western North Carolina. I thought about the fact that in 1 year, we've distributed over 10,000 overdose reversal kits, and that our participants reported 1,357 overdose reversals. I considered going over the data points on why harm reduction programs like ours are so important, and that all the evidence that points to the fact that to reduce overdose and reduce the spread of disease, we must move past the idea of shame and enforce sobriety. In the end, I knew that those numbers are not why people come back to us, and why those who work with us overwhelmingly only visit us. Participants know that we put our people first. Yes, I'm absolutely proud of our program as a whole, but I am most proud of the individual stories. I am proud that participants bring their friends to us for service, that I can sit with participants on our patio and hear about their lives and their needs. I'm proud that when asked anonymously, our participants have said that our team's demeanor and friendliness is our greatest strength. In a world where people who use drugs are looked down upon and regarded as less than, we have made an effort to do better, and it's working. Our program is not about enabling or promoting drug use. It's about being there for people who need us to stay safe. We are here for people who are doing their best to protect their health and survive in a world where options are so limited. To the 206 people whose names will be read today, I can only say I'm sorry that the world failed you. To the families and friends of those who have lost people that are here today, I'm so very thankful that you remember the greatness of those you've lost, and that you're honoring them here today. For those who have passed but have no one to mourn or remember them, I love you. I am honored to serve in my role at the Western North Carolina AIDS Project because I get to spend every day working for a better future. We continue to build and grow as an organization that understands that a person's humanity can never be taken or forfeited. We read these names today in remembrance of those lost to remind ourselves of the cost of not doing enough to support our people. I will continue to do better. WinCap will continue to do better. And hopefully 1 August in the future, this list won't grow. Thank you all for hearing me out today, and I really do appreciate everyone being here.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah. There's a lot to be said. You know, there's a lot of intention out there to support our fellow community members with however we can, and that's the beautiful thing. I mean, it really is to see people want to do the work, want to create the space to be of service, to help. I think we all need help. We all get by with a little help from our friends, and this idea of friendliness. I feel like Tom kind of touched on it. That demeanor that we are trying to practice. We're trying to practice being friendlier, being more open, being less judgmental, less hierarchical. And there's power in that. It's funny that I say power in reference to non-hierarchy, but there's medicine in that, and reducing hierarchy and just being a supportive individual to another individual who needs help. Thank you, Tom. Up next we have Adam Jenkins. If Adam is ready, Adam is also going to be sharing his own personal story with the rest of us. Are you ready, Adam?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that I have the opportunity to share my story today. This is actually the first time that I've ever publicly shared my story, and I was completely unaware of the amount of emotion that I hadn't yet touched yet whenever I was writing everything down that I wanted to say today. So bear with me. First, I would like to say that addiction, it is in every walk of life. I grew up in a home where love and money were two things that I never went without. I never struggled. Anything I ever wanted, it was always handed to me. I guess you could say I was somewhat a little bit spoiled. 19, I bought a brand new house, started nursing school. Most people would think I had my ducks in a row and that everything was going as it should, but I was living a little bit reckless, under the radar, going to the clubs every weekend, going out with friends. Wasn't doing drugs yet in my early 20s, mostly just alcohol. I did start smoking marijuana whenever I was 20, but that didn't last long. I was a social butterfly. I was the life of the party, always on the go. At the age of 25, I decided to tell my mother that I was gay. And I struggled a lot with coming out to my mother because my family, my entire family, they're all very Southern Baptist, very against that lifestyle. And I have to say that was probably the first time in my life that I ever considered doing drugs is whenever I came out to my mother, because I needed something to mask that pain. I came out to her at 25. About a month after I told my mother that I was gay, I moved to Oregon. I met a gentleman, he lived in South Carolina. We dated for 6 months. He took a job out there, asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, sure. I get out there and I'm realizing that I put myself in a situation that I probably didn't need to be in. So October 12th of 2013, I returned home to North Carolina. December 4th, he reached out to me and said that he was in town and that he wanted to meet up to give me the rest of my belongings. So on December 5th of 2013, it was 4:05 p.m. I was on the way to meet him. I received a text message, looked down at my phone, and it was a message from him stating, I don't want to see you. I'm not ready for this to be over. Please don't come get your things. While I was reading that text message, both right tires of my car went into the wet grass, and it was kind of like a vacuum. It sucked me into the grass. I was fighting the steering wheel as hard as I could. Hit the tree going about 62 miles per hour is what they estimated. When the paramedics arrived, they found me 74 feet from the car, laying on the pavement. No pulse, no respiration, obviously very mangled and dead, pretty much. I get to the hospital. I was on a ventilator for 11 days. I remember at one point, I think it was day 9, I remember waking up and I remember hearing the doctor ask my mother, what does he do for a living? And I remember hearing her say, he's a nurse. And then he said, what does he do for fun? And she said, he has horses and that's his happy place. And I remember hearing this doctor say, you can empty out all of, go ahead and get rid of all the horses, empty out the barn. He'll never ride another horse again. He has 2 spinal fractures. I had a brain injury. Moving forward, after spending about 7 months, either in the hospital or in a rehab facility, doing extensive physical therapy, they sent me home. I returned to my mother's house after not living with her since the age of 18, and I was 27 at the time. I was prescribed 120 10 milligram Percocets every 14 days. That's 240 a month. I was running out 2 to 3 days before my next script was up, and I caught myself reaching out to the public, people that I knew that dabbled in that area of their, prescription pills, trying to find pills. Then the doctors put me on Adderall because they said that I needed a stimulant to get me off the couch, just to brush my teeth or wash my hair. After being home for about 4 months, I reached out to someone and they said that they had meth. If I wanted to try it, they would come over. So they came over, and she had never smoked, snorted. All she had ever done was inject. So for the very first time in my life, I sat down, put it with a tourniquet on my arm, and I allowed someone to inject methamphetamines into my veins. And that is a high that I can't even put into words. It's a high that no one should ever experience, but so many people do. It changed me forever. I was only injecting meth for 11 months. To some people, that may seem like a very short period of time, but I'm still, many years later, I've been clean from meth now for 2 years, but I still, it's a daily, every day you wake up, it's a daily struggle, you know, to remind yourself, we're not going back there. We're not doing this again. Through my drug addiction, I robbed from my family. I did a lot of horrible things that I can never say I'm sorry enough about. Through the last 2 years of my growth journey, I realized that there was something other than nursing that I wanted to do, but I couldn't quite figure out where I needed to be in life. It was almost as if I had plateaued in my growth journey. And I felt like there was something else that I could do for the community, to maybe tell my story, to maybe help someone else, you know, maybe not follow the same path that I took. So in March of this year, I stepped way out of my comfort zone. I had only ever done hospital work. And in March, I started working at WinCap. Since I've been at WinCap, I have met some amazing people, Raymond being one of them. Just in the short period of time that I've known him, he's changed my life, just being himself and shining the light that he shines so bright. And I think that's the most important thing that we could all do is, you know, drugs are everywhere and there's so many people doing them. And we need to just shine so much, you know, so much light in a darker time for others. And while being at WinCap, I've seen, you know, the amount of Narcan that goes out and the amount of overdoses that have been reported. It's mind-blowing. And I'm so thankful to be able to be a part of this, to give back to the community, in hopes that maybe my story can change someone else's life. Thanks.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
I would do the same thing that Jennifer asked earlier. If anyone wants to unmute and just, you know, share a thank you or a round of applause or anything for Adam's just heartfelt story. You know, it's real. It's real talk. And that's a beautiful thing. Real talk is a beautiful thing. An eye to eye, a heart to heart is what we all need more of. And I think we all have certain people in our lives that we get to share that idea with, of an eye to eye, a heart to heart. And I personally feel that we all could use more of those. And when we practice things is how we get better at them. When we practice being vulnerable, when we practice, you know, all is coming. It's a kind of a yogi philosophy there. But thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for sharing. And we now are making our way to a big part. You know, the event is Overdose Awareness Day, and a big part of it is highlighting everything all the speakers have shared with us, the organizations and the individual stories. And, you know, another big part of it is the sharing of those we've lost. You know, there's a lot. There's, you know, as Thomas said, there's over 200 names on this list that we've cultivated, and that was just in a few weeks' time. You know, this list is incomplete. There are other people in our area that are not on this list, and there are, you know, thousands more across the country. And, this list isn't incomplete because there will be more. So we've got a presentation that Jennifer has put together that I'm going to start a little screen sharing here and see what we can do in just a moment. Thank you.
Invite everyone to get present and just listen and be with each name as it's read. Aaron Shapiro. Aaron Willis. Adam Brown. Adam Leopard. Allison Reese. Amanda Lovelace. Amber Collins. Amy Carol Hutchinson. Andrew Millwood. Angie Kunches. Anne Crummy. Anna Macias. Anna MacArthur. April. Arlessa Simmons. Artem Caravelli. Ben Zaslow. Bess Croson. Beth Brophy. Bill Wallace. Blake Roberts. Bo Youngblood. Brian Head. Brittany Combs. Bruce McLaughlin. Cameron Finley. Cameron McCanch. Cameron Toller. Carrie Boggs. Carl Marcus. Carol. Casey Flanagan. Casper Jonathan Ray. Chastity Ray. Shasta Hall Smith. Chris Cooper. Chris McKinney. Chris Shook. Corey English. Dakota Gaskill. Dalton Michelle. Daniel. Daniel Cotton. Danny Williams. Daryl Lunsford. David Clapton. David Vaughn. Desmond Williams. Devin Vickers. DJ. Dominic Presti. Don Snipes. Dylan Deaton. Dylan Picard. Eric Dandy. Ethan Hines. Fletcher King. Gabriel. Garth Robertson. Gary Boyd. Gary Halstead. Grant Gausby. Heather Bishop. Heather Brown. Henry Wallace. Howard Nathaniel Sides. Ian Wainwright. Iris. James Simonell. Jason Edward Glenn. Jared Miskovich, Jared Runyon, Jason Rain, Jason Edward Glenn, Jasper Jazzy, Jeff Laver, Jeffrey Big Mac McIntosh, Jennifer Kerrigan, Jennifer Smalls, Jeremy Livingston, Jessica Renee Pless, Jim Willis, Jimmy Pugsley Adams, Joe Fender, Joe Harbor, Joel Kenneth Sanders, Joey Bress, John Michael Bridwell, John Venters, Jonathan Green, Johnny Schult, Jordy Sowell, Josaro, Josh Triplett, Joshua Cato, Joshua Venters, JT Elmore, Justin, Justin Gatton, Katie Moses, Kay Hemp, Kaylee Shevitz, Kelly Early, Kendall Taylor, Kent Whitehead, Kim M, Kimberly McDonald, Christy Fuqua, Kyle, Kyle Allen, Lana Rhodes, Landon, Laura Clothier, Lauren, Leah, Liam Mullen, Lindsay Bake, Lisa Hood, Marcus Ritchie, Mark Noren, Mary Catherine Johnson, Mary Elizabeth Levesque, Matt Gallagher, Matthew Sayer, Max Hendrickson, Megan McClung, Megan M, Megan Steffi, Meredith Noel Cummings, Michael Ilderton, Michael Morrow, Michael O, Michael Oliver, Michelle, Michelle Buckner, Michelle Smiley, Mickey Efrath, Mickey Moore, Monica Efford, Miles Davis, Nick Davenport, Oliver Thomas, Patches, Patty McEwen, Paul Limper, Peter Goulart, Philip Douglas Chaffin, PJ McClenney, Ralph Stockton, Regine G, Reed Alberts, Raina Williams, Rico Parks, Rob Carlin, Robbie Dellek, Ron Harris, Ron Luther, Roy Green, Sahil, Sam Daves, Sam Hayes, Sam Sporn, Samantha Russell, Samson Ray Manning, Scott Morrison, Seth McDonald, Seth Morgan, Shamara Cook, Sean Kay, Sean Rowland, Shea Butter, Sherry, Skylar Hirsch, Spanky Carter, Stanton Anno, Stephen Earl Pullman III, Stephen Edwards, Steve Allen Sloan Jr., Stephen Reidner, Stephen Toney, Stone Crawford, Sydney Nanny, Tara Pheasant, Tara Civic, Taylor Griggs, Terenza Falls, Thomas Ward, Tina Chapman, Todd Allen Deeve, Tommy Fallon, Trenton Phillips, Tyler Korn, Victor, Vitali, Walker Rhodes, Wayne Reynolds, Wyan Escher, Will Sipe, Will Thornton, Willie Girardi, Woody, Zachary Austin Kirkland, Zach Ayers. And I'll invite all of us, wherever you are right now, just to take a deep breath. And Pastor Joe is here with us from Hominy Baptist Church in Candler, where the overdose crisis has been particularly cruel. And Pastor Joe, if you're ready, we'd be grateful to invite your words of guidance at this time.
Let me say, first of all, thank you to Monica for thinking of me to share in this moment. And thank you for you guys for allowing her recommendation to stand. This, this year is my 40th year as a pastor. I'm older by at least 100 years than any one of you. You guys all look so young and beautiful and life out in front of you. And in 40 years, I don't think I've ever been more moved than I feel right now. And I thank you for inviting me into this moment so much. I thank you for what you're doing to save lives. I lost a young man who was more than anything a son to me. He was to marry my daughter. He had lived with us several years. I adored him. And he took his own life. But he took his own life after seeing the pain in the eyes of people who truly loved him as he would fall again and again and again into his addiction. And I heard someone spoke so early on about the guilt we feel and the need we sense we have to save lives, to jump in there and pull it together for someone, and we can't, and I couldn't. And I have been grieved since October 8th, 2013. But being here, it turns out I'm surrounded by this wonderful company of people who not only know grief, but know how to make things different and better. And I knew you were out there, by the way. I just had never had the opportunity like this to say thank you. The church I serve, I've been here 23 years, almost 24, and the church is 208 years old. The cemetery predates that. And there are graves there that belong to slaves and to Native Americans. There's a Confederate war general buried there. I could go on, but the ones that have touched me most and have done the greatest work of helping me become more introspective are the people that I've had a hand in helping bury, including 4 from our congregation who in the last few years have taken their own lives, and 6 others who have died of overdoses. We've not been able to save everyone, have we? But by George, you guys are saving lives, because there would have been a lot more. There would have been a lot more if you hadn't been out there in the trenches. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of this battle with you. Thank you for that. If you would, I would like to pray with you now, if you would join me in that. Heavenly God, who teaches us to know we are loved. Heavenly God, who watches as we spend too much of our lives trying to forget that we are loved. Bear with us now as we have heard the names of people who matter even now, but mattered greatly. Remind us that they not only were loved, but are loved. Thank you, Holy God, that in our search for meaning or release from pain, even when we have done it wrong, you have not abandoned us. And Holy God, thank you that when we have discovered our place in handing cool water to a thirsty person, it is there that we have actually discovered ourselves. Thank you, oh God, that there's plenty of cool water. Let us never turn away from the supply that you provide, that comes from all of these wonderful people and the agencies they represent. But remind us also, God, that those names represent people not only who needed cool water, but I'm certain many, many times in their lives they gave cool water to those who needed a drink. So we thank you for what they did for us and for others. I thank you, oh God, for this moment of remembrance. And I share it the way I pray, oh God, in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Joe. That brings us to the end of our agenda for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for being a part of this important moment, for holding space with us together. In closing, I want to invite, if anyone is moved or knows anyone who would wish, if it would serve anyone, to make a donation in the name of someone that they've loved and lost to an overdose. Joey is going to put the link in the chat to a donation portal. The proceeds will be shared between Seek Healing and WinCap and the work that we do in preventing overdoses. And I just invite everyone to take good care of themselves today, and also let everyone know that if you're in need of more support in your grieving process, in your healing process, you're welcome to come to any of Seek Healing's connection practice meetings. You can find the calendar on our website at seekhealing.org/calendar. They're not limited, as I said earlier, to people who use drugs or in recovery or not. They're for anybody. They're just a place to talk about what's real. And if that would support you in the wake of this event and in the grief that we're all processing, I'll invite you to join us there. Is there anything else that you'd like to say in closing, Tom or Joey?
I'd just like to say thank you again for everyone who spoke, for everyone who attended, to anyone who submitted names. Really, thank you. It means so much that we could make this happen, even in the face of a pandemic. I do have an immense amount of love for everyone who is standing with us and who is moving forward to make the world a better place. If anyone has any questions about harm reduction, like to carry naloxone, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to speak to you and get Narcan out into the community.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. May everybody be well. Have a good night.
Thank you.